I was 12 when my brother Marcus won the National Science Fair with his project on renewable energy systems. The governor presented him with the award. Local news stations interviewed our family. Dad hung the trophy in his office, right above his own PhD diploma from MIT. I was 12 when I entered the same science fair with my project on quantum entanglement patterns. I didn't win. The judges said my presentation was confusing, and my methodology was unclear. Mom patted my shoulder afterward and said, "Science isn't for everyone, honey. You tried your best." Marcus went on to study physics at Princeton. I went to the local state university because Dad said anything else would be wasting money on someone without aptitude. I studied on a partial scholarship, working 30 hours a week at a campus bookstore to cover the rest. "At least you're practical," Mom would tell relatives when they asked about my education. Not everyone can be a genius like Marcus. What they didn't know was that I was taking graduate-level physics courses by my sophomore year. My professors kept pulling me aside, asking why I wasn't applying to better programs, why I was hiding in a mid-tier state school when I was solving problems that stumped their PhD candidates. Family stuff, I'd say, not wanting to explain that my parents had already decided I wasn't worth the investment. Professor Walsh, who taught my quantum mechanics course, changed everything. He caught me after class one day during my junior year. "Elena, I've been teaching for 32 years. I've seen maybe 5 students with your level of intuitive understanding of quantum systems. You're seeing things the rest of the field hasn't caught up to yet. Why aren't you pursuing this seriously?" "I am pursuing it seriously. Not here. You need to be at Stanford, MIT, Caltech. Somewhere with the resources to match your mind." I laughed. My parents would never support that. They've already decided I'm the practical child. Then do it without their support. "I'm writing you a recommendation letter. You're applying to Stanford's PhD program. Their quantum computing lab is the best in the world and you belong there." I applied that night, alone in my apartment, knowing my family would mock me if they found out. The application asked about my research interests. I wrote about something I'd been thinking about for years. A theoretical framework for stabilizing quantum states at room temperature, which would revolutionize quantum computing. Every expert said it was impossible. The laws of physics made it impossible. I thought they were wrong. Stanford accepted me with a full fellowship. They offered me a position in the quantum computing lab under Dr. Raymond Chin, one of the most respected physicists in the field. The stipend was more than my parents made combined. I called home to share the news. Dad answered, "Stanford? For what?" "PhD program in quantum physics. Full fellowship." Silence. Then, "Elena, this is ridiculous. You're not Stanford material. They probably accepted you by mistake or to fill some quota. You should decline before you embarrass yourself." "I'm going." "With what money? We're certainly not paying for you to waste time pretending to understand physics when Marcus is the one with actual talent in this family." "They're paying me. Full fellowship plus research stipend." More silence. Then Mom's voice in the background, "Let her try. She'll wash out in a semester and come home. Better she learns her limitations now." I hung up and never asked them for anything again. My first year at Stanford was brutal. Not because the work was too hard, but because I was surrounded by people whose families believed in them, who had resources, who'd come from prestigious undergraduate programs. I was the state school kid, the one everyone assumed was there to diversify the cohort, not because I belonged. I let them think whatever they wanted. I was too busy working. Dr. Chen's lab focused on quantum coherence, keeping quantum states stable long enough to perform computations. The field had hit a wall. Quantum computers existed, but they only worked at temperatures near absolute zero, requiring massive cooling systems. Room temperature quantum computing was considered science fiction. I thought it was just an engineering problem waiting for the right theoretical framework. "You're chasing a fantasy," one of my fellow PhD students, Jason, told me during my second year. "Every physicist for the last 50 years has tried to solve room temperature quantum computing. It's thermodynamically impossible." "Only because we're approaching it wrong," I said. "Sure. You, the girl from Nowhere State College, have figured out what Einstein, Feynman, and every quantum physicist since couldn't. That's realistic." I stopped talking to Jason about my research. Dr. Chen was different. He listened. "The field assumes we need to fight thermal noise," I explained during one of our meetings. "What if instead we harness it? Use the thermal energy itself to stabilize the quantum states through a feedback mechanism. He stroked his beard, thoughtful. That's unorthodox. Potentially revolutionary or potentially nonsense. I can't tell which. Let me try. Elena, if you're wrong, you'll waste years of your PhD on a dead end. Your career could be over before it starts. And if I'm right? He smiled. Then you'll change the world. All right. Let's see what you can do. I spent the next 3 years building the theoretical framework, running simulations, testing small-scale prototypes. I failed 847 times. Each failure taught me something. Each breakdown revealed a new piece of the puzzle. My family never asked about my research. When I called home, rarely, the conversation always turned to Marcus. He'd graduated from Princeton and was now doing his postdoc at CERN, working on the Large Hadron Collider. Mom sent mass emails updating the extended family on his latest papers, his speaking engagements, his rising status in the physics community. My name was mentioned in passing, if at all. Elena's still at Stanford doing her student thing. My student thing was working 16-hour days in the lab, slowly building a system that everyone said was impossible. Year 4 of my PhD, I had a breakthrough. The simulation worked. The theoretical model held. The math was perfect. I'd found a way to use controlled thermal fluctuations to stabilize quantum entanglement at room temperature, creating a feedback loop that maintained coherence indefinitely. Dr. Chin stared at my results for an hour straight, checking and rechecking the math. Elena, if this works in practice, if you can build a working prototype, this is Nobel Prize level work. This is rewriting physics. Let's build it. The prototype took 8 months. We worked in secret, knowing that if word got out and we failed, I'd be laughed out of academia. Jason found out anyway and made sure everyone in the department knew I was wasting resources on science fiction. The day we tested the prototype, Dr. Chin invited 3 colleagues, experts in quantum computing, thermodynamics, and experimental physics. They came expecting to witness an expensive failure. I powered up the system. Room temperature. No cooling systems. Just the quantum chip, my thermal regulation framework, and the feedback mechanism I designed. The quantum states stabilized. Held coherence. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 30 seconds. The longest anyone had maintained quantum coherence at room temperature before was 0.003 seconds. We ran for 5 minutes straight before I shut it down. One of the visiting professors dropped his coffee. That's impossible. It's physics, I said. Just different physics than we've been using. The room erupted. They were all talking at once, demanding to see the code, the hardware specs, the theoretical framework. Dr. Chin was quietly crying in the corner. We need to publish immediately, one professor said. This is the biggest breakthrough in quantum computing history. Every tech company in the world will want this. Every government. Do you understand what you've created? Unbreakable encryption, quantum networks that work at room temperature, quantum computers that can fit in a smartphone. You've just made quantum computing practical. You've just changed everything. We submitted the paper to Nature that night. Peer review took 3 months. 3 months where I couldn't tell anyone, couldn't share, couldn't celebrate. I called home once during that time. Marcus answered. Elena. Haven't heard from you in months. Still playing student at Stanford. Still here. Must be nice having such a light workload. I'm working 80-hour weeks at CERN. Real physics is demanding. I'm sure. Mom and Dad are coming to Geneva next month for my presentation to the European Physics Society. You should come if you can afford the ticket. See what actual high-level research looks like. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. The Nature paper published on a Thursday morning in October. By Thursday afternoon, my email had 4,000 messages. Stanford's press office was fielding calls from every major news outlet in the world. The physics community was in an uproar. Friday morning, the calls started. Apple, Google, Microsoft. They wanted licensing agreements, exclusive partnerships, whatever it took to get access to my technology. The numbers being thrown around were staggering. We're prepared to offer $3.2 billion for exclusive rights, a Microsoft executive said during one call, with additional royalties that could exceed $10 billion over the next decade. Dr. Chin sat beside me during these calls, equally stunned. Elena, you realize you're about to become one of the wealthiest physicists alive? I just wanted to solve the problem. By Monday, the bidding war had reached $5.8 billion. A consortium of tech companies, Apple, Google, IBM, and Samsung, had pooled resources to acquire the licensing rights. Stanford would get a significant portion. Dr. Chen's lab would be fully funded for the next 20 years, and my share would still be over $2 billion. I was 28 years old. I'd just become a billionaire by solving an impossible problem in my university lab. The university scheduled a press conference for Tuesday afternoon. Every major news outlet sent camera crews. The auditorium was packed with physicists, journalists, tech executives, and curious students. Dean Morrison introduced me. Dr. Elena Rodriguez has achieved what the entire field of quantum physics thought impossible. Her breakthrough will fundamentally transform computing, cryptography, telecommunications, and countless other fields. She represents the absolute pinnacle of scientific achievement. I took the podium and explained my research in terms non-physicists could understand. The questions lasted 2 hours. When I mentioned that I'd conceived the core theory during my undergraduate years at a state school, a murmur went through the crowd. Did anyone support this research early on? A journalist asked. My undergraduate professor, Dr. Walsh, believed in me. And Dr. Chen gave me the lab space and freedom to pursue what everyone else said was impossible. That's all I needed. What about your family? They must be incredibly proud. I smiled politely. I haven't told them yet. They don't really follow my work. That quote made headlines. Billionaire physicist's family didn't know about her world-changing discovery. My phone started ringing that evening. My parents' number. I let it go to voicemail. 15 more calls. I turned my phone off. The emails came next. Elena, we saw the news. Call us immediately. We're so proud of you. Why didn't you tell us? Your father wants to discuss your options. I ignored them all. Wednesday morning, I was on Good Morning America via satellite. The host asked about my family. I told the truth. They didn't think I was capable of real science. My brother is a physicist at CERN, very accomplished, and he was always the family genius. I was the practical one, the one who wasn't quite smart enough for serious academic work. They told me not to apply to Stanford because I'd embarrass myself. So I didn't tell them when I succeeded. I didn't need their validation. The interview went viral. Social media exploded with stories from other scientists whose families had doubted them. Science is for everyone who has the passion and dedication, I said in a follow-up interview. Not just the people whose families believe in them from the start. Thursday afternoon, my parents showed up at Stanford. Security called my lab. They're insisting they need to see you. They say it's urgent family business. I sighed. Send them to the coffee shop across from the physics building. I'll meet them there in an hour. I made them wait 90 minutes. When I finally arrived, they were at a corner table looking uncomfortable and out of place among the students and professors. Elena. Dad stood up. We've been trying to reach you for days. I've been busy. The press tour, patent filings, negotiations with the tech consortium. You know, the usual things for someone who's not smart enough for real science. Mom flinched. We never said that. You said exactly that. Multiple times. You said I'd embarrass myself at Stanford. You said I was wasting time pretending to understand physics. You told relatives I was playing student while Marcus did real research. Should I continue? We didn't understand what you were working on, Dad said. You never explained it properly. I tried. For years. You weren't interested. You'd already decided Marcus was the physicist in the family and I was the kid who worked retail. Even after I got into Stanford, one of the most competitive physics programs in the world, you assumed it was a mistake. We were trying to protect you, Mom said. We didn't want you to set yourself up for failure in a field where Marcus was already so successful. We thought you'd always be competing with him, always falling short. So instead you made sure I knew from age 12 that I wasn't good enough? That's protection. Dad's jaw tightened. We're your parents. We deserve respect. You're people who share my DNA. You didn't earn respect through your parenting. You earned exactly what you gave me, dismissal and doubt. That's not fair, Mom said. We supported you. We paid for your undergraduate. You paid partial tuition after making it clear it was a waste of money. I worked 30 hours a week to cover the rest. Meanwhile, Marcus got everything paid for, plus a car, plus spending money because his education was an investment. Mine was charity. We're proud of you now, Dad said. Can't that be enough? Proud of what? The $5.8 billion? The Nature paper? The press coverage? You're not proud of me. You're impressed by my accomplishments because they're so big you can't ignore them. But you were never proud of the person who did the work. The student who stayed up until 3 a.m. running simulations. The researcher who failed 847 times and kept trying. You didn't believe in that person. What do you want from us? Mom asked. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I wanted your belief in me when I was 17 and applying to colleges. I wanted your support when I was 23 and starting my PhD. I wanted you to ask about my research, to be curious about what I was working on, to care about my life beyond checking if I'd embarrassed the family yet. But I don't want anything from you now. Elena, please, Dad said. We're family. Family is more than biology. Family is the people who show up. Professor Walsh showed up. Dr. Chin showed up. My lab colleagues showed up. You showed up when there were cameras and billion-dollar contracts. That's not family. That's opportunism. I stood up to leave. Marcus wants to talk to you, Mom said. He's been calling. I'm sure he has. Now that I'm not the embarrassing little sister, he probably wants to collaborate, get his name on my research, benefit from the attention. Tell him I'm not interested. He's your brother. He's a stranger who happens to be related to me. Just like you're strangers who happen to have raised me. You taught me that love is conditional, that pride must be earned through achievements you deem worthy. Congratulations. I earned achievements so significant you can't ignore them. But I don't need your love or pride anymore. I outgrew that need while you were busy celebrating Marcus and forgetting I existed. I walked out of the coffee shop and back to my lab. My phone was ringing again. I blocked their numbers. The tech consortium finalized the licensing agreement the following week. The press coverage was relentless. Time magazine cover story. Forbes profile. TED Talk invitation. The Nobel Committee's office had informally reached out, according to Stanford's president, though the official announcement wouldn't come for months. My research team expanded to 20 scientists. Stanford built us a new quantum computing facility, state-of-the-art, funded by my patent revenues. We were already working on the next generation of applications. Quantum networks, unbreakable encryption protocols, medical imaging systems that could see individual molecules. You've created an entirely new field, Dr. Chin told me during a lab meeting. Practical quantum computing. Every physics student in the world will study your framework. You're going to be in textbooks, Elena. Your name will be mentioned alongside Einstein and Feynman. It felt surreal. I was the girl from the mid-tier state school, the one who wasn't supposed to understand real science, building a research empire that was changing the world. Marcus showed up at my lab 3 weeks after the coffee shop incident. Security called again. Tell him I'm in a meeting. He says he'll wait. He's been here for 2 hours already. I sighed and went down to the lobby. Marcus was sitting on a bench, looking smaller than I remembered. The confident golden child now looked uncertain, almost nervous. Elena. You're persistent. I'll give you that. Can we talk? Please. 5 minutes. We walked outside to the campus quad. Students passed by, some recognizing me and whispering to their friends. The weird reality of being famous in physics circles. I'm sorry, Marcus said. For everything. For all the years I let them build me up by tearing you down. For not defending you. For not seeing what you were capable of. Okay. That's all. What do you want, Marcus? Absolution. A relationship where we pretend you weren't complicit in making me feel inadequate for 15 years? I don't have time for that. I was young. I didn't understand what they were doing, how it affected you. You were 3 years older than me. Old enough to know better. Old enough to see that they treated us differently. You benefited from that difference, so you stayed quiet. That's not ignorance. That's choice. He was quiet for a moment. I read your Nature paper. 3 times. It's brilliant. Beyond brilliant. It's the kind of work I've dreamed of doing my whole career. And you did it alone, without support, because you were that determined to prove yourself. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was trying to solve a problem. I'm at CERN working on incremental improvements to existing particle physics models. Important work, but ultimately small. You've revolutionized an entire field. You've done what I've always wanted to do, change physics forever. And I can't help thinking that if Mom and Dad had believed in you the way they believed in me, if I had supported you instead of accepting my role as the golden child, you could have done this years earlier. How many other breakthroughs did we cost you by making you fight for every scrap of validation? That's not my problem to solve for you, Marcus. Your guilt is yours to carry. I know. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what they did, what I allowed. And I'm sorry. Thank you for the apology. But it doesn't change anything. You're still the brother who told me I was playing student while you did real physics. You're still the person who never once asked about my research, never defended me, never questioned why our parents treated us so differently. Your regret now doesn't give me back those years. Can I at least follow your work? Read your papers. They're public. You don't need my permission. I walked back to my lab, leaving him standing in the quad. The Nobel Prize announcement came in October. Nobel Prize in Physics for groundbreaking contributions to quantum mechanics and the development of room-temperature quantum computing systems. I was the youngest woman to ever win it. The ceremony in Stockholm was surreal. Royalty, world leaders, the greatest minds in science, all gathered to celebrate achievements that pushed human knowledge forward. I wore a custom gown, gave my acceptance speech in front of a global television audience, attended the formal banquet. My parents sent flowers to my hotel. The card read, "We always knew you were special." I left the flowers in the room when I checked out. After Stockholm, I was invited to speak at physics departments around the world. MIT, Cambridge, Oxford, Tokyo. Students asked how I'd made my breakthrough, what advice I had for young physicists. Don't wait for permission to do great work, I told them. Don't wait for someone to tell you you're smart enough, talented enough, worthy enough. If you have a question that won't let you sleep, if you see a problem that others say is impossible, chase it. Even if everyone doubts you. Especially if everyone doubts you. The greatest discoveries come from people who refuse to accept that something can't be done. A young woman approached me after one lecture, tears in her eyes. My family says physics isn't for girls. That I should choose something more practical. But I love it. I can't imagine doing anything else. Then do physics. Not to prove them wrong. Not to earn their approval. Do it because you love it, because you can't imagine doing anything else. That's reason enough. He hugged me. Thank you. You're the reason I believe I can do this. Dozens of students told me similar stories. Families who doubted them, advisors who dismissed them, colleagues who underestimated them. They saw themselves in my story. The overlooked, the underestimated, the ones who succeeded despite everyone's doubts. I became something I never expected. A symbol. Not just of scientific achievement, but of succeeding without validation, of believing in yourself when no one else does. The quantum computing facility at Stanford became the most prestigious research lab in the world. We had applications from thousands of PhD candidates every year. I chose students who reminded me of who I'd been. The ones from unknown schools, the ones whose families didn't understand their work, the ones with brilliant ideas and no support system. You belong here, I told each new student on their first day. Not because of where you came from or who believed in you before. But because you have questions worth answering and the determination to answer them. That's all you need. My parents tried to reconnect over the years. Emails. Phone calls. Letters. They wanted to be part of my life now that my life was impressive enough to brag about. I responded politely but distantly. Thank you for reaching out. I'm very busy with research. I hope you're well. Christmas cards came every year. We miss you. We love you. We're so proud. I sent generic cards back. Happy holidays. Best wishes for the new year. They wanted me to forgive them, to let them back in, to give them credit for my success. We raised you to be strong, one of Dad's letters said. Our tough love made you who you are. I never responded to that one. They didn't make me who I am. They showed me who I'd have to become despite them. 5 years after the Nobel Prize, I was invited to give the commencement speech at Stanford. I stood before thousands of graduates and their families, including hundreds of physics PhDs starting their careers. You're about to enter a world that will doubt you, I told them. That will question your abilities, your worth, your right to be in the room where decisions are made. Some of that doubt will come from strangers. Some will come from colleagues. And some, perhaps the most painful, will come from the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. Here's what I learned. You don't need their belief to succeed. You don't need their validation to do extraordinary work. You need curiosity, determination, and the courage to pursue questions others say are impossible. So, the people who doubt you now will celebrate you later when your success becomes too big to ignore. They'll want to claim they always knew you'd make it, that they always believed in you. Let them say whatever they need to say. But remember who showed up when success wasn't guaranteed. Remember who believed in you when you were nobody. Those are the people who matter. Those are your real family. The graduates stood and applauded. I saw parents crying in the audience, some with pride, some perhaps with regret, recognizing themselves in my words. After the ceremony, a man approached me, distinguished, in his 60s, with kind eyes. Dr. Rodriguez? I'm Professor Emeritus Walsh's husband. She passed away last year, but she wanted me to give you something if I ever had the chance. He handed me a letter yellowed with age. I recognized Professor Walsh's handwriting immediately. Dear Elena, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and hopefully you've achieved everything I knew you would. I want you to know that teaching you was the greatest privilege of my career. You had a rare gift. Not just intelligence, but the courage to pursue your ideas even when everyone said they were impossible. That courage is rarer than genius. I hope you never lost it. I hope the world didn't dim that brilliant spark I saw in my classroom all those years ago. And if your family never came around, if they never saw what I saw, that's their loss, not yours. You were always enough, Elena. You were always extraordinary. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. With great admiration and love, Professor Walsh. I stood in the middle of the Stanford quad, crying for the first time in years. For the teacher who saw me when my family didn't. For the path I'd walked alone. For the girl I'd been who'd needed someone to believe in her. Professor Walsh's husband patted my shoulder gently. She talked about you until the very end. Said you were her proudest achievement, even more than her own research. She knew you'd change the world. She never doubted it for a second. That evening, I sat in my office looking at the letter, thinking about the people who'd shaped my journey. Professor Walsh, who'd seen potential no one else saw. Dr. Chen, who'd given me space to chase an impossible dream. My research team, who worked beside me through failures and breakthroughs. The students who told me I'd inspired them to keep going when others doubted. My phone buzzed. An email from my mother. Elena, it's been 5 years since we've seen you. Please, we miss you. We know we made mistakes, but we're still your parents. Can't we move past this? I stared at the email for a long time. Then I opened a reply. Mom, I hope you and Dad are well. I've moved past it. I moved past it years ago when I realized I didn't need your approval to build a meaningful life. You're not villains in my story. You're just people who made choices that hurt me, and I'm someone who chose not to let that define my future. I'm successful. I'm happy. I'm surrounded by people who believe in me. That's enough. I hope you find peace with your choices. I found peace with mine. Best, Elena. I hit send and felt lighter than I had in years. I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez. I have a PhD from Stanford. I've won the Nobel Prize in physics. I've revolutionized quantum computing and built a research empire that's training the next generation of physicists. I've saved my patent earnings into research initiatives that fund students from underprivileged backgrounds, giving opportunities to kids like I was, the ones whose families can't or won't support their dreams. My biological family wanted credit for my success when it became too big to ignore. But they didn't make me successful. They showed me what I'd have to achieve despite them, and that lesson was perhaps more valuable than their belief would have been. I learned that validation from people who doubted you means nothing. That success achieved without support is sweeter than success handed to you. That family isn't just biology. It's the people who show up when you're nobody, who believe in you before you have credentials to prove your worth. Professor Walsh showed up. Dr. Chen showed up. My students show up every day, brilliant and determined and hungry to change the world. That's my family. And their pride means everything.